as I said. And there's a woman over there who's told me about what it was. She's in her 90s, and she was a big square dancer, you know, back in the days when everybody had them in their houses because it was immoral to dance in other places. And she's given me I think an interesting picture of what it used to be. But Gordon was telling me, of course, you've been fiddling for, I guess, all your life, haven't you?
Well, I've played for dancers since I was about 15, 16.
Yeah. So you've seen a lot of changes in it too, and I'm kind of interested in is, she stopped dancing when she was this woman stopped dancing when she was just a young woman, and I'd kind of like to have you tell me about some of the changes you have seen over the years.
There's not been that many changes in my lifetime. Now, between my generation and my dad's, there was some changes.
Was he a fiddler too?
No, he was a dancer.
Oh, he was a dancer.
Yeah,
well, great, but you can tell me something about that.
He couldn't play a tune, but he could whistle one perfectly. And he remembered every tune he ever heard, I guess. I learned a lot of my tunes from him whistling. Yeah. And he was a hard-going feller. He would go and dance all night, or practically all night, and then work the next day. He didn't miss a day's work just because he went to a dance. And he was the one that really got me to play the fiddle, because he loved fiddle music better than anybody. He was a foxhound. That was the two things that he liked, was to hear a foxhound run and hear fiddle music. And they danced a little smoother shuffle than as time went on. They got more jigging.
Well, now you're saying just exactly the thing this woman was telling me. She said She said when we were doing it, it was a real smooth kind of dancing. And she said, I've seen them doing it today down at the Senior Citizen Center. And she said, they don't dance, they jig. And I couldn't understand exactly what she meant.
What she was seeing was probably cloggers, and that's just a little bit different yet.
No, she said it was. She knew the difference between clogging and square dancing.
She did.
But and so, well, what is the difference between the kinds of steps that they were dancing then and what they're doing now? I mean, what did she? I mean, jig has a technical meaning, but I don't think that was what she was meaning.
Jig was pretty loose expression. I think probably it just pretty well covered. It's freestyle dancing. I mean, there was no set pattern that anybody had to dance, as long as they was hitting the.
That's what I said a while ago.
Hitting the step, keeping with toe and heel and moving, you know, and keeping time to the music, and preferably both. You're supposed to dance with both feet, not, you know.
Right, I know what you mean. But these are still in squares. We're still talking, they're in a square.
Yeah, it's pattern. Within the square.
Right, yeah.
Now, you see a mixed square, there'll be some of them dancing and some of them just shuffling along.
Shuffling.
A lot of the guys, especially, do a lot of, seems like there's more guys kind of clumber around and shuffle. And
Well, now, Leon Friedland was talking to me about the history of it, was saying that the traditional thing that had come from the Tennessee Hills was where the first couple do whatever the pattern is, and then the rest of people are just staying there flirting and doing whatever, and then it moves on around. Now, of course, that's one of the big differences with the Federation square dancing, where they're doing, you know, for demo purposes, everybody's doing something. And is that still the way people are dancing today?
That's
with
pretty
the top
much the
couple?
way they do it here. The first couple out, and they do the particular, they usually out by the right and back by the left, and then a swing, and then maybe, depends on what the pattern is. Sometimes they'll do-si-do their corner ladies, sometimes they're opposite. I've never danced that much enough to be real familiar with the call, because I never had a chance to dance very much. I used to dance once in a great while, and we'd have somebody that would relieve me.
how has your music changed over the years? Is it with these slower patterns that the people were?
My dad danced a little slower music than we do, but not real slow. It was still, he always said he wanted it quick and devilish.
When did that start to change?
Well, it was no, it wasn't an abrupt change or anything. It just.
Was it up to the individual fiddler who would set the pace?
Well, there's a lot of fiddlers just never could play very fast, and some of the dancers didn't want it quite that fast. They could get by with in the shuffle, they could get by with a little slower. But when the more jigging, when they started jigging, then they wanted faster music. The more they jig danced.
And this, again, we go back to, I still don't understand jig dancing, you see.
It's just you just have to see it. It's
Yeah,
just a
we're
loose
going
term.
79.
It's just a loose term that just covers freestyle. There's all kind of intricate steps I've heard of, the double shuffle and the old time back step. There's not but 2 or 3 people I ever seen in my life that could really do that. But they done something they thought was that, you know. But there's quite a few different steps that come from the old time stuff. I mean, before clogging. You guys will have to pardon me breaking into a coughing spasm every once in a while. Boy, I've had it the last 10 days.
There's something going around. It starts out like a cold. And is that what you have?
I had it earlier in the year.
I've got asthma to begin with, and then it is just complicated.
And then I have had allergies the past couple of
I
years.
wonder if that's it.
There's so
In
much
my
pollen.
senior years, if I'm not, I never saw the pollen like it was this year over in us. It was just yelling. You just scrape it off on that.
And then the wind has been blowing on these nice days, and it's been just awful. I normally am not bothered by it, but boy, it's been something else.
I just turned the air conditioner off a while ago. I hated to have it all closed up, but I've had it on all last night.
At least
that helps.
That helps a lot.
Yeah.
It gets a lot of the humidity and the pollen and the stuff out.
Are you a musician too? Oh.
I'm not. Just good listener.
She's tolerant. She's tolerant.
I see. Do you come along when he plays then?
Sometimes. Sometimes he has to leave before the chores are done.
And then you have to stick around to do that. I'm going over to the dance in Kabul on Saturday.
Are you playing that one? Yeah, that's what I told her. It'd be a good time to meet you.
We're
And
going
then
to go over there. So
I've never been to that one yet.
That's a good dance.
Is it really?
Now, well, you can listen to me a second while you're letting yourself come. I talked to him day before yesterday, and I said, well, would it help anything if I were to bring a little video of one of our dances, something showing some of these different things? And he said, do that. Well, I've got some already, but I'd like to tell you the one I'd like to get. Is his name Merchant?
He'll be there.
At where?
At Kabul, if something.
Yeah, and I won't be able to go to Kabul. But what about?
Why not?
Because it's the holidays, families coming down, and everything.
Well, that never bothers me.
Yeah, but I've got to come from way over to there, you know. What about, does he ever come to Fort? Well, I'm not. What about, does he ever come to the Taney Center?
Not often, he does.
What about Ava? Are they still dancing in Ava?
He does occasionally, yeah.
See, I'd like to almost kind of set this up rather than just let it go. I'd like to get some good ones in one group where I can get him.
He's one of the best examples of the old smooth dancing that I know of.
But you know what you were saying about slower. Emmett Adams, who died 2 or 3 years ago, was called Ragfoot Adams. He was considered one of the best old dancers over around Forsyth in that area. And his stuff wasn't this fast stuff. He had a lot of kind of almost minstrel type.
Well, some of them did do
He did, you
they
know.
done a lot of soft shoe.
He did a lot. He did a lot of that. He did
like
a lot of
soft
that.
shoe
Yeah.
stuff. But now it depends on the individual.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But if you really want to wind a bunch of people up and get their blood boiling,
Play rattlesnake.
play something fast. It builds a fire.
See, this guy's almost uncivilized what he does, because I got his tape. We went to a music party up north of Springfield, and that's the first time he gave me one of his tape. And I was coming back south on 13, I think it is there, and I was listening to this tape, and I looked down and I was going over 80 miles an hour.
Oh boy!
And I thought, now all I needed was the patrol to stop me and give me a ticket, and I thought
Tell 'em
that
what you were doing.
tape would have cost me about $80, you know.
Do you have what group? What is the name of your group, or do you have that you play with? Or do you have a?
Yeah, it's Bob Holt and the State of the Ozarks.
Okay. Well, that's not. And who's in it? I mean, what instruments are in it?
We've got the fiddle and banjo, plays rhythm, actually, and two rhythm guitars and a bass. Now this guy that plays the banjo alternates when we're doing country songs. You know, people, most of our square dancers are getting a little age on them. They can't square dance just one right after another. So we do some round dances and two steps and waltzes and so forth in between. And when we're doing that, now this banjo picker plays the lead guitar.
You know, I am married to a man who works in Washington, and he's 62 now. And when he was out in Colorado during the 50s, he got involved with the people who were doing square dancing out there with the Shaw people, you know. And he just loves to square dance. And he's always said when he came down here, I wish there was a place to go square dancing. I've lived here 25 years, and I didn't know that there were all these square dances around here. Do they ever advertise or post these? It's just people who know.
It's got a terrific grapevine. You can whisper square dance to two people, and by the weekend there'll be 100 people.
For heaven's sakes. Are there any over by Mountain View? It's below the nearest.
Yeah, in the summertime we go over to Van Buren about 4 times a year.
Really?
About once a month. Try to, but this year I couldn't make it. I didn't have that many dates left open.
Don't you have a bunch come from up in Washington County, up around Potosi?
Oh yeah.
So up north of you there'd be an area too.
Yeah.
That's your old friend. Now that'd be kind of interesting. That's
Well,
your
all around down Ironton and
that Arcadia Valley area.
there's quite a lot of square dancing over in there. They tell me.
But you see now, right around us, all there is are these club square dances. And
Yeah, well,
I find those
these people at Van Buren was tickled to death. I was over there playing at Big Springs for the park service. Just, once in a while they put on some entertainment. And these people come down from Van Buren and wanted to know if I could play a square dance. And I said, well, yeah, that's really all I'm fit for. That's all I've ever done. So I played a square dance for them, and they said, would you guys come up by, we're having a dance tonight, would you come by and play one for us? And I said, oh yeah, we don't care. So they've got a pavilion built right on the courthouse square. And we went up and played them a tune, and God, they wanted to hire me every Saturday night. But I already had so many commitments that once a month in the summertime is all I can.
Yeah, it's an awful expenditure of effort, I would think, for
I think they're up around Salem. There used to be some up in there because they used to come up to.
The thing of it was, there's no fiddlers over there.
That's what I was getting ready to say.
Yeah.
They're losing.
Howie Teague was the last. In fact, they was dancing. The only square dancing they got to do was to a tape of of how
Yeah,
it
and
is.
that's too bad when you can't
Yeah.
have the real
The
music.
old time fiddling is, we keep hoping it's going to come up, but it's a very fragile thing. But the reason is one complements the other. See,
Yeah, of course. And what's happening to the young people? Why aren't young people doing this? I wonder.
You don't have time.
It used to be a young person's dance. I mean, my friend over in Mountain View that was telling me about it, she said, "Oh, well, there weren't older people. There were young marrieds, maybe, and this was how people did their courting and things.
Yeah.
They were kids. Well, what's happened to that now? Why? What
There's a lot of different reasons. We've got some young kids that we've got to dance, and a lot of them. A lot of pretty nice, making good dancers. But back for a long period of time, they didn't concentrate any on it because they never thought about anything like that. When we as kids, you just went to the dance, and when you got the urge, you got somebody to help you get through the set, and you just learned like that. They didn't take any effort to teach you or anything. But we've got some people in their 40s, and we've got these kids, and then we've got, you might say, senior citizens, and that's the age groups now. There's a long span in there between the young kids and the 40-year-olds. There's no dancers, hardly.
What about the fiddlers? Are they coming along too, or are the youngsters not interested
I'm
in
the
that?
only.
So much peer
there's
pressure. Much peer pressure. Too.
Really?
There's two other guys.
Rock and roll and all this kind of stuff.
Two other guys in the area that can play square dances pretty decent. Well, after these three, but one of them's in Mountain Grove, and one's down by Gainesville, and one's down Forsyth. That's how wide they're scattered out. I play these people from probably 7 or 8 different counties comes to our dances. Now, when we play down here at Forsyth, we have people from Greene, Christian, Stone, Taney, Ozarks, and Douglas.
There's none over by
Rice
Red Springs
County.
anymore. I haven't heard of any over in there. And even
What-
in Berry County,
How
I
many
haven't heard
people
of it.
come to an ordinary average dance?
Oh, 100 and probably average 130.
Well, that's a pretty good crowd.
Not bad.
Yeah.
What percentage dance would you say? I'd say 3/4 dance, wouldn't you? There's about a fourth of them sit and watch.
No, not that many.
You don't think so? I haven't really ever. I've
I
noticed.
If they're too crippled up, that's the
Yeah.
only reason they sit and watch.
Yeah.
They're just not able to dance. And
Yeah.
I see people get up that can't. They may have hobbled in with a walker, and after a while they'll get up and hit a few licks, whether they can stay with it or not. But they'll dance a few they can't keep from it. Got Rex Kazee down at Forsyth has got a wooden leg from his knee down, and he dances with that. And he just got that this last winter.
We got a one-armed square dancer.
Got a one-arm guy.
Tell you one thing that I've always noticed, and it's not just the dancing, but in a lot of things, that people don't notice handicaps in this part of the country when you get away from the city as much as you would say, because like there's a music show over there at Oldfield, and there's 3 or 4 handicapped people, but they didn't bring them in. I mean, they're local people, you know.
Yeah.
And what's his name? That's the one-armed dancer.
Johnny Walker.
No, Braden.
The dancer, yeah.
Yeah. And you know, everybody just knows how to. They know how to dance with him, don't they? It just nobody looks awkward about it or anything.
You just contrive to swing.
Yeah.
What
And
about?
boy, he dances hard.
Oh yeah. Now, what about Arkansas? I'm asking him a lot of things too.
Sure,
And all
absolutely.
Is there I don't know anymore. Do you see any difference from those that come up from Arkansas as opposed to the ones that are from down here? I haven't seen
You've
it. I used
seen
to always hear it referred to those Arkansas dancers, but I
You've
haven't.
seen old
Yeah.
Larry Sanders dance.
Man,
You know
there's
how-
one. Will he be at Kabul, I wonder?
No.
He didn't come up there. Well, you've got there's this guy, I've never seen a person dance
That's-
from the minute he gets there till he leaves, and within the second set, he's stopping wet, isn't he, already?
He's big.
Big guy, yeah.
There's no telling how much he weighs because he's long-bodied. He
Yeah,
has short
yeah.
legs.
Yeah.
But he must weigh 240 pounds
He's
or
a big
50.
guy, yeah.
And
But
he-
light
And
on his feet.
he just
Yeah.
jumps when he gets in those things. He doesn't, I mean, he'll just leap almost in some of those things.
And he can't keep from hollering when
Yeah.
he gets through. Boy, that really is getting all over it.
Is there an Ozark style of dancing that is
Yeah, that's,
distinctive? What is it? I mean, what is the
You-
distinctive thing?
I'll tell
about
you
Ozark
what, you
dancing?
come see it and then you explain it. I can't, I'm not very good at putting things in words. It's hard to put that in words. You just have to see
It's
it.
much more athletic from what I've seen from, say, the ones up at Butler or somewhere. Remember, we've been to some
Oh,
festivals where they
yeah.
brought some and up around something, and they, well, they're not quite as slow as the Texas style, as the clubs, but they're just walking a little faster, aren't they, than those?
That's all.
What about the calling here? Is this still, is there one within each set, or it's not, there's not
Individual.
one caller?
Yeah, it's
Each individual set has one, and who does that? Just somebody decides to do it during the dance, or
just whoever can. And if they don't have a caller in that set, they'll try to borrow one and get somebody to come. You know that
That's what gets me.
a lot of them is called by women.
Oh yeah.
Because now, Vera, my friend who told me about doing it back in the teens of the century, said that there was a single caller at the dances then, that there wasn't one in each set. So that's obviously been a change, and if that's typical around here.
Well, I think that probably depended on where they was at.
Really?
Because now another thing is that you don't have to go very far. Transportation and communication wasn't too good not very many years ago. And small areas, you find that it changed
Sure.
quick. The music and the dancing and the different calls. Ava and Forsyth even dances a little different. The calls.
Oh yeah, I've heard many arguments over she wasn't calling that right because maybe not much different, but
Yeah.
you know.
Well, of course, that is what's nifty about this kind of dancing, I think, is that there is so much
It is.
variation. And-
It's like fiddling.
Yeah.
It's like fiddlers, I should say, not fiddling, but
Yeah,
fiddlers.
Well,
It is so individual. It changes. I'd say every 30 or 40 mile radius here. The towards Springfield, see, that was different.
Yeah, yeah.
And east or west, either way, it changes a little bit.
and that's what I find, because I guess I'm basically an anarchist. I love sun, just black. Thank you. I guess I'm basically an anarchist at heart. But this club square dancing that they do,
Yeah.
it just I find it's kind of repellent because it's
Yeah.
it's uniform from coast to coast. They have all these rules. You can't dance until you've had 24 weeks of lessons to learn the 96 basic steps and stuff. And it just seems, I mean, the sort of absolute uniformity which they set out to do in the first place. Rather, I just love this, that there's different pockets of it around here that everybody
This
understands.
Hagen is the same way. It's choreographed. It's
Yeah.
a certain thing. Now this is an interesting guy that has the hall over at Kabul. He's a really nice fellow, very articulate, and he's got a square dance club, the Western Square Dance Club. He teaches square dancing, and that's the main reason he built the building. They was renting a building in Mountain Grove, and it was too small to accommodate them, and they was having to pay quite a bit of rent. So he had this ground behind it. He's got a garage on this edge of
Thank you.
Kabul,
Thank
on
you.
the old highway, by the way. And he built this nice hall. He got central heat and air. Got it insulated except up for the roof. I don't know if he's got the roof. He said it really sounded like freight trains are going when it rained,
What's his name?
Mac Cooper.
And he does Western square dancing
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, but he's got there's about 2 of his sets. Now I understand that when he has his Western square dance, he has one, I don't know, every week or every 2 weeks. That they have like 9, 8, 9, 10 sets there. But we've had as many as 9 sets in our old time dance too.
And they have it once a week
Pardon
in
me.
Kabul. Is it once a week for the old time square dancing too?
No, we just play once a month.
Once a month.
Well, it's a good thing for a lot of senior citizens, though, is this, and it's nationwide, and a lot of people are mobile now. I mean, they have their trailers, of course, they all have their little outfits.
Watching television,
businesses in Springfield that sell the costumes, and all the men have their little perspiration rag or something. But one time at the fairgrounds, Art and I were playing. Now, Bob would say that Art was not a square dance fiddler, for sure, but we were alternating out there. We'd play, and then they had this Western group would come in. Of course, they called to a guy with a record, now you swing him to the left, and that kind of stuff.
And it isn't necessarily even the same kind of music.
They said, well, let's dance to a fiddler. They they didn't even more know what he was doing than the man in the moon. And he was playing faster than he usually did to try to, and it was just useless. It was senseless. They were so used to this automated type calling, where they walk, Well, when you go to Kabul, you're going to see the difference right there. You're going to see a real contrast.
Well, I think one of the things, I'm certainly not going to talk about this or expose them or anything in the Smithsonian Center, but it's all money. Everything connected with it is money.
It's become commercialized.
Yeah.
It's marketable now. See?
Yeah,
that's the thing.
right.
Oh, God, I
big.
read not too long ago about the nationwide what it was. It's unreal at the number of people that belong to square dance.
They have conventions all over the country.
Much of it is a lie. I'm finding out that they really inflate their figures.
No doubt. But now somebody was up in the Northwest, up in Oregon or someplace, and there was a big square dance festival or something there, and there was 10,000 people.
Yeah, well, the one I'm going down to the convention, and the national convention. It's supposed to be 20,000 there, but it's a lot of it is vendors and people like that. One other thing, I don't want you to give away any trade secrets or anything, but I am going to be talking about the kinds of fees that they charge, and they have now. I understand that some of their callers will make $750 a night plus expenses.
Probably. That's probably.
And there's not much money involved in the old time square dancing. And I don't want to know what you make or anything, but can you tell me what an average group makes who's playing for them? Because those are the only people that make
I don't
money.
mind a bit telling you. They charge $3. Most places they do it. We had to go to $4 in Ava because Edna Mae was having to pay a little higher rent. She doesn't make anything out of it. All she wants is enough to pay the rent and pay the band. And she always makes coffee, and that's all free, and stuff like that. But now over there at Kabul, Mike charges $3. And he's got coffee and popcorn and stuff free. The soda you have to buy. And we play for 70% of the door, which varies, but it'll run, see what we've had as high as $300.
But that would be on the high end.
For 5 people.
For 5.
For 5 people. Well, that's one. I want to make the contrast.
Now, Van Buren
with what a commercial thing this other is, and that
Van Buren flat out pays us $300 because it's so far over there. I wouldn't go without that.
Oh, but these callers are getting $750. They're getting plus expenses because they fly around the country, on that kind of thing. And you
Oh,
can,
I believe that.
and you can see, and friends, I was reading something in one of their magazines. They were talking about these silly clothes that they wear. I find very off-putting, and they're trying very hard to get more people involved in it because they're losing people coming in. They thought, well, maybe we ought to relax our standards of dress. And they have in the magazine, well, we can't do that because then we're undercutting our suppliers. And it's very important. This is about a $10 million business, the supplying clothes. I've got that figure from them. And so it's all tied together, that's, to me, the interesting contrast is that what new people are doing and people like you doing all over the country are doing it more for the love of the thing.
That's
and for
right.
pleasure. And
It's indigenous.
Yeah.
How many families are, like you have families of fiddlers for generations, the Schulers and what was McGee's, another family of dancers, and there are a bunch of families where they've been dancers. That's been, rather than music, it's been their dancing. It's gone on for, and the Delps, that their name, Delps and everything, and a bunch of these families.
There's one family down here that at one time or another, I've played for 4 generations of them.
Yeah.
Wow.
But of course,
Times are changing too.
some of them's gone now. There's not that many left, but now they're the old Bill McGill was
McGill. That's what I was trying to think of, not McGee.
He
McGill.
he was about the same age as my dad. He was born like 1880s something. Worked at 100 different things. Finally, eventually wound up to be a barber. And of course, I played
about that.
Played music, played them honky tonks.
And then you came back down here.
I come back here in '65, and we've not been farmers per se. You know how farming is in this country. It's cattle.
That's right.
We've grass. Of course, when I was a kid, we raised corn, and then later years we raised a lot of small grain, wheat and barley and oats.
But it doesn't pay to do that anymore.
I was just thinking this morning. I don't know what train I got on, but some train of thought. My God, we used to have something to do every day. I mean, every day. There was a job to do every day.
Well, with that when you actually are doing that, when you're raising your own feed.
And the whole family, you could go out on this hill, and all up and down this creek, you could hear people hollering at horses and hollering at kids, and hear kids playing. There was a lot more people than there is now, and somebody was out working, doing something all the time.
Well, tractors have made a big difference too.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
I saw that in my wife's family.
We don't plow and raise stuff like that. We just
Yeah.
put up hay. All the activity that is around here is hay, and I have my hay cut once a year. And other than that, I just fiddle around and bush hog and been spraying. I sprayed a lot of.
Let me ask you, why should we preserve this? These are the questions I'm anticipating.
I wonder about it myself.
I do too. I mean, it's hard for me to explain to somebody that doesn't know what we're doing anyway that I think it's important. I think knowing who you are is an important thing. I think that's a lot of the trouble with the rest of the country. That's when I was at the Smithsonian, I told you about it, the problems I had. When I wrote back to the girl, I said, well, one thing about it, I said, when I get home, I know this is where I belong. I couldn't have been happier to live anywhere but the Ozarks.
We had a lot of pride.
Yeah.
All of our generations, the people around had pride in themselves. They didn't want to owe anybody money, and they didn't want to look scroungy. They wanted to be clean. Now, people didn't have any money, and they wore patched clothes and ragged clothes. But when I was a kid, you didn't go to the grocery store or to school and smell people.
Yeah.
And they didn't have didn't dress like they do, and they didn't have hair like they do. They was neat, and they had a lot of pride in that. There was a few ne'er-do-wells in every community,
Had a certain percentage of any society.
but it was a great minority. And now it seems like
And do you see the music as part of that?
I think it could be very well be part of it. It's a pride in doing something, achieving something.
I think there's a lot of things that you'll see still in the Ozarks that are a direct reflection of the isolation that they had, where people were absolutely dependent upon themselves. They couldn't go running to somebody else. A friend of mine was, one of the first jobs he had was in the 30s when they came out with aid to something, over by Forsyth. They had to go out and force people to take that money. Even the poorest ones that really were entitled to it, but they wouldn't do it because of the pride they had.
The guy who's my caretaker when I'm gone, who's had a terrible injury years ago, and he's certainly able to get Social Security disability, won't do it. And his kids are able to get reduced price lunches at school, and he won't take it. He won't take it just because of this kind of pride you're talking. He's one of the finest human beings I know, and he's, I think, a fifth generation Ozarker, and
If Bob and I were to live like some of these young people, the debt they're in, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it because you nowadays you have to have a certain amount of debt just to buy a car or to buy a home or something. But I hate owing money. I don't like to owe anybody any money, and
My grandmother, when she was up in her 80s, and she would stay like a month with each one of her kids. And when she got a little pension, and she got a few commodities. And when she come to our house for her month, Dad wouldn't let her bring her commodities because he didn't want them on the place. He said, we've got something to eat, said we don't have to have them. Said you just leave them wherever you're at. Said you're welcome to come and stay as long as you want to, and we'll feed you. But we don't need any commodities.
What? Now we were talking about the square dancing, the dancing itself being typical of the Ozarks. Is the fiddle music itself special too? I mean, is there? And can you tell me about that? What's special about? No,
I can't really.
Can you, Gordon?
The only difference he reads music. I couldn't. If you offered me $1 million to tell you one note on the scale, I couldn't do it. But if we go up to North Missouri, we'll hear. To me, kind of a boring thing. It's just hornpipe, the same tempo after horn. Now, I really admired what Cyril Stinnett did. I always have. But I really prefer your fiddling much more than I do Cyril Stinnett. I like these tunes, but I don't know, just something about them. It was always the same.
Is the tempo different?
And it doesn't. They claim they have more variety than we do, but I don't think so.
There's not a place to put your foot down in any of that.
See, it's not dance. It's not what we would. This is all started as dance music. In other words, back when Bonnie Prince Charles got kicked out of England by the Jacobites, the bagpipe had been pretty much the lead instrument with his reign. Now the fiddle or whatever style had been hanging in the background. It can imitate a bagpipe. In fact, the fiddle can imitate, a violin can imitate just about anything. And it came to the fore then, of course. And I don't know, what was I even talking about? See, I got off on that Bonnie Prince Charles, and I forgot what I was talking about.
I'm talking about what is unique in the fiddle music here. I've been up in New England a little bit on holidays, and we have gone contra dancing up there, and the fiddle, there's some very good fiddlers up there, and they go up to Cape Breton for these big fiddle conventions,
Yeah.
I guess. And they said they were telling me that they have actually preserved the Scots tradition up there so well that Scotland, their fiddle music changed, and they've come back and learned from the Cape Bretons up there.
That's the same thing that's happened here. It was isolated, therefore it stayed pure.
Yeah.
Where in Scotland it evolved, done the same thing. And Ireland's had Irish people from Ireland tell me the same thing. Said this is more pure Irish music, traditional Irish music, than they've got in Ireland.
It is. Well, now that's interesting. So it is in the. I was out in California last week. I had a little gig myself to do out there, and I was talking. The guy who was my host, I found out, was a fiddler, and I was telling him what I was doing. And he's interested in Irish music, and he was talking to me about that. So this follows an Irish pattern here.
Now, we don't really have in the Ozarks this Irish
No.
that you're going to hear in St. Louis among the Irish and the revivalists of Irish
no.
music. Oh, I know what I was getting ready to say. Now I thought, see, my mind, it's going. My wife thinks I've lost it already.
Well,
But
I'm 60, and I started losing my mind about 10 years ago.
but well, now I've forgotten what I was going to say. What were we talking about? California, Irish music and all that. Yeah. Well, now here, I'll give you an example about this change. That's still in what I was going to say, and I've lost the train already, see. That's what the doctor asked me not long ago. He said, when you get up out of a chair and walk across the room to the door, he said, do you get to the door and forget why you got up? And I said, when I get up out of the chair, I've forgotten what I'm getting up for. What was funny about that, the phone rang, and he talks about it, and he hung it up, and he said, now, what were we talking about? And I said, well, I'll be named. I said, I'm paying you, and you can't remember what we were talking about. But Art, the fiddler I played with for 17 years, we played at Wolf Trap. That's the first time I was ever around Irish fiddlers, you know, from Ireland and from Chicago and everything. And I sat down and played the Flowers of Edinburgh with Johnny McGreevy and I've forgotten who else. And I seconded it exactly the way I seconded it for Art. And yet here's probably 200 years difference between the time Art's people came into the United States and we met these guys. And probably nobody's learned this from music. It's been oral, you know, and rote. And yet it's changed that little. Now, there's a lot of tunes, though. Well, there's thousands of tunes. Tens of thousands of tunes. And one reason there's so many different tunes is, Bob, too, you'll hear a tune, you'll think, boy, that sounds almost like so-and-so. Well, that's what originally it was. But some guy, either he'd go somewhere from down in here, or say another fiddler would come through, and they'd hear 4 or 5 good tunes. Well, by the time he got home, he'd mix them up.
Sure.
And so you have all these different reels. Of course, a hoedown now is nothing more than we took the reels and the hornpipes and we sped them up to fit our dancing. So that's usually when they're talking about a hoedown, they're talking about a reel or a hornpipe originally, aren't they? I see, I always say the same. Notice I say a question mark when I look at him, because I'm waiting for him to say no.
Well, what I meant a while ago is not the Irish. These Irish people didn't tell me that my music was more like Irish. They said that the American Irish,
I see.
the American Irish community,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I would say that.
played.
Well, you know, this guy that I was talking about in California, I asked him if he ever played for square dances, and he said he had, but he didn't like doing it because he said, I like to be able to improvise a little bit. And he said, when you do that, when you're playing for a dance, you just can't do that. He said, it's you got to play the same thing over and over again. He said, I get bored doing that. But
Well, they'll usually run in a medley. That's what he does.
oh yeah.
But now that's a lot of the reason that these young fiddlers can't play square dances is because they want to play this Texas style music, progressive. It's a progressive style music.
What do you mean by that? I don't know that phrase.
It's not danceable for one thing.
It's got so many. No, it just it follows a progressive chord pattern.
Oh, I see of the chord pattern.
And also a note pattern. And they put a lot of stuff in the tune that, I mean, in our old tunes, that just doesn't belong. That was really never meant to be there. There were tunes wasn't written that way.
Too busy.
And therefore you can't dance them. Besides all that, they're too slow. Our tunes retains the beat above all. It's got the, Dad's always said, he said, you've got to play something that has a place for them to put their foot down. I mean, with a solid, it's got to be a solid beat. And as far as explaining our music, it's the nearest I've ever been able to come is to compare it with like a revival church, or I've never been a part of a voodoo outfit, but I can imagine it would be a part of that, because I've heard some black music that does the same thing. It builds and builds and builds until the people are just wound up higher than a kite. I mean, it actually sends these people out of space. You can get.
Or
Driving 80 miles an hour, yeah.
You look at them and the expression on their face.
I said it's almost pagan. See, it's almost.
It's a feeling.
Yeah,
it's soul stuff, and the music is the same. It's the driving force that you, as Alvy, my other guitar player, said. You know, they call the fiddle the devil's boss because it inspired all these wild feelings in people.
Well, that's very interesting that you touch on that. You sent me those photocopies from Vance Randolph, of course.
Oh,
about
yeah.
How wicked it was considered.
Yeah.
And
still is by some people.
And that was what I've heard this from people around, that was the fiddle was the thing that did it, and it's so. That's interesting that you can still feel that.
It's the catalyst. You know, they had play parties. My dad said when he was a kid, where you could sing the words and the tunes and dance. They didn't much care from doing that. But if there was a fiddle, then that stirred up all these devilish feelings. You know, got the blood hot.
Yep.
This woman that I got my stories from over in Mountain View, Vera Toll, her name is. She said that her family had dances at their house, and that they wanted to know where their kids were, and they thought it was a good idea and all that. But she said there was one woman in the community who wouldn't have it, and she had kids too, and the kids kept begging and begging that they would have a dance at their house, and the mother finally said, "All right, you can have one. But you have to have a violin, not a fiddle."
Yeah.
And she said, "Can you imagine anybody being so ignorant?"
Oh, well, they
But
that's
that
in their mind. And
yeah.
Now some it was no music at all, wasn't it, when they had play parties? And some allowed a piano. But now, when in high school, just not too many years ago, where my wife went, there was no dancing between. I mean, if they had dancing, it was none of this boys touching a girl or anything,
Well, they didn't even allow dancing up here. My oldest son
exercises is what they
was the student body president, and he was the first one that ever got them to have a sock hop or a dance at this school.
Yeah, it was just a couple of years ago.
Well,
one
Purdy,
of them
Purdy,
here.
Missouri.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But when my husband was came down here for the first time he was ever around here, he went to a Quaker work camp over in Shannon County back in the 40s, and he was telling me they had play parties then over there too.
Used the same calls
Exactly.
as some of the square dances.
Yeah, but you couldn't have. They were singing them. That was what they were doing at the time. But exactly the same thing.
Well, anyway, Alvy said.
And they still went out in the bushes with the girls.
That's another reason they were considered Simple too.
Yeah.
He said if
Should've
they'd
gotten
never
revival
played
meetings.
anything but waltzes, they wouldn't have called the fiddle the devil's box.
Yeah.
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 It's these wild old tunes that winds them up.
Of course, waltzing was considered
Oh, they-
immoral when they started
foreign,
waltzing.
So was polka.
Sure.
It was risque. It was immoral. It was
Well, you
led
people touched each
Yeah.
other.
when I was a kid, they called any round dancing that belly rubbing. You know, it didn't go for that too much. It was all right square dance, but there was none of that belly rubbing.
This, my Vera told, again, going back to her story, the woman who would only allow a violin in her house, not a fiddle, she said her mother, Vera's mother, had argued with her because she said this woman was a great believer in revival meetings. And going out in the brush arbors, and you know what went on at those. And she said, her mother said to her, now you know there's more souls made than saved at those brush arbors.
That's true, very literally true. That's why I was, from what I've read, it's a lot of these big voodoo rituals and stuff of that nature. They all couple up and pair off out here pretty soon. And how many holy roller preachers have you heard of running off with somebody's wife after? And of course I gotta say, and I've got a pretty sharp eye for that kind of stuff. I've seen a lot of it. I've got to say I don't see anything like that happening at our dances anymore because everybody's too damn old.
No, everybody's too old. There used to be a lot of drinking, she was telling me.
Yeah, and we don't have.
No.
There's a few that has a nip or two, but you never
Nothing
see it.
I've ever seen.
It never
What I've
shows.
seen.
Now I played those nightclubs in Moline. Hell, you could see stuff going on all the time.
Sure,
And man,
yeah.
it was running
And I was
rampant.
talking to the older fiddlers that are gone now, like Art and Glenn Rickman and Lonnie and some of those. The dances were really rough back, say in the 20s and back
I've
in
seen
there.
a
But
lot.
there, when they would be young and start playing,
Lots of fights when I used
Yeah.
to play the house dances when I was
And church meetings,
Sure.
same thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Anything that was a gathering point. There's a church south of Springfield called Bloody Ridge. It's really named Pleasant Hill, but the name they call it down there is Bloody Ridge. And it was at the edge of two rural communities, where one clan lived. And so whenever they'd have a revival meeting, well, of course, some of the others would come and break it up. And they had, finally somebody got killed out in the road with a knifing. And so they always called it Bloody Ridge, yeah.
Well, in one of those Vance Randolph things that you sent me, I loved the phrase. He had somebody talking about somebody who had brought a gun in his bottle pocket.
Oh, yeah. Vance would have known that. Vance always said when he went to square dance, he always tried to dance with the fattest woman there because it gave him something to hang on to. And I see, but when you go, you watch, it is amazing. I bobbed her and said, but there's that little woman, the little white-haired lady that I used to dance with some, and I really was halfway through, I was ready to die. I mean, I'm like the old boy Mark, so I was sweating, but I was gasping for breath, and I could feel my face was flushed, and everything. And that's when I used to think those things lasted 15 or 20 minutes. When I went home and taped them, they lasted like 5 to 8. Right about 7 or 8 minutes is about. But when we quit, I was ready to collapse into a chair, and she's not even breathing hard, and she's ready for the next one. But see, they know how to pace themselves.
Well, he's playing the fiddle. He's getting you going, isn't
Well,
he?
they know how to do it without working at it because they've done it all their life. I'm struggling, first of all, to not make a fool of myself, which I still did. I told Bob, I said, there comes a time where they'll laugh with you, but when they start laughing at you, you better start learning then, see, because I'm getting tired of fooling with you then, yanking you around. But that I'll always remember. She's the one you said was the squirrel hunter, wasn't she? She's the one who went out and it got dark, so she just slept out in the woods one night. Were you telling me that, or Albie? I think.
Albie.
Yeah.
She'd be over at that Kabul dance.
Yeah, well,
you ought to see her do the dirty boogie too. Man, she get after it.
Who's the one that has the rings on from all her different husbands? So she says.
Oh, Joe.
Joe,
little
yeah,
Joe.
I saw Joe not long ago.
Well, she
Still
don't
look
come-
the same.
She don't come to the dance much anymore.
Yeah.
Hardly ever see her. I was going to tell you about this. We've got some items in our paper every week, county paper, 75 years ago, 50 years
Yeah.
ago,
Yeah,
25
right,
and
right.
100 years ago. And this is a little church up here about 2 miles across the hill called Black Oak, or well, back then it was called the Brawley Church. And when one of the items it said, to say this is 75 years ago, back several years ago,
Yeah.
said the whiskey and blood run freely. They had a revival or something down at Black Oak, and the whiskey and blood run freely. You know who that was? Was my uncle, my dad's twin brother, and Carl Hayden's dad.
Oh.
You remember Carl Hayden?
Oh yeah, Caton family, sure. Yeah.
It was,
We got Hayden's over around
Well,
Mountain View.
these Haydens came in and were on KWTO. They were a real popular family on KWTO.
well, that's who they went to the dance together, and Uncle Wills had a pair of knucks and a gun. He asked Carl which he wanted. Oh, Carl said, "Give me the knucks." They knew there'd be somebody up there to fight, and they wasn't anybody, and they got a little drunker. And of course, Uncle Wills never did come home without fighting somebody. Dad always had, if it was just him and Dad went, and he couldn't
Yeah.
find nobody else, he'd fight Dad before he got home.
Yeah.
So him and Carl got into it, and Carl thumped hell out of his head with his own knucks.
Incidentally, one of the young Haydens, one of Uncle Carl, I knew him as Uncle Carl Hayden in the Hayden family on KWTO, but Charlie, I think it is, who was about 2 or 3 years younger than I was, or maybe is even younger, maybe in the baby, is
Yeah,
now
he's-
one of the top bass players in,
Oh, really?
in jazz in the world.
Is
Yeah.
that
For
right?
heaven's sake.
Oh yeah, he's living in Europe now, and I've seen 2 or 3 articles on him.
Yeah.
He was several years younger than
Yeah, he
we
was
are.
quite a bit. He was, wasn't he? Yeah.
Little Charlie.
Yeah, he's the one that we always used to claim they stuck him with a pin, because just when they got ready to end the program and would sing the gospel, he'd start crying. You know, we always say, well, they've stuck, oh, we have to go now, little, whatever his name was, Jimmy or something like that. Is
Carl's dad's name was Bus.
Yeah.
Bus Hayden.
Where do you get your music?
Oh, I got some from both sides of the family, but nobody in my immediate brothers and sisters. I was the only one of the bunch that played. But my mom's brother was an excellent fiddler, and my dad's brother was an excellent banjo picker. And my great granddad was a fiddler.
So
Yeah.
it's really in the tunes are all in the family then.
Well, not of course. I've learned tunes from all over.
Well, I'm
you know,
sure you
before.
have now,
But
but I just wonder where
early
they came
on,
from, yeah.
early on, I got to. My early tunes from my dad whistling, like I said, you know, very first, and then immediately I started learning Lonnie Robinson's. And Buster Fellows was another radio fiddler I liked a lot, and then everybody, all the old, anybody that was on record. I'd heard all the. My grandma had a collection of all the records that was popular in the 20s and 30s. A lot of them was novelty records,
Yeah.
a lot of them foxtrots, and all the skillet lickers and all the old hillbilly bands, you know. And I played those records for a babysitter when I'd go down there and I was 5 or 6 years old. A lot of those tunes was ingrained in my head before I could ever play hardly anything.
Have you ever made up your own music?
No. I play somebody else's and try to play it as near as like them as I can, and it sounds like I made it up, so I don't need to be making up any on my own. Somebody gave me a tape the other day. Some guy had made up a song he called tune, and the song he called Arkansas Waltz. And I was playing this tape as we went to McClurg just to see what it sounded like. And I told Patty, I said, that's the reason I never did write a tune. I'm afraid it'd sound like that.
to turn that.
Smithsonian, one of the Smithsonian festivals too? 'Cause
No,
somebody
not
did.
the festival.
Been to,
No.
where'd you go? Oh, you went to the National Folk
went
Festival.
to the National Folk Festival.
Yeah, at Wolf Trap.
And we stayed in Washington D.C. a night and a day, I guess, and we didn't have time to do it. I got to go in the one building was all we went in. Just
that
the
place is.
space building.
When was that? When did you go there?
80 or 81.
Yeah.
One of the two, I can't remember.
Just before we go, I want to get one more thing from you. When we, I'm going to be writing this story in July, and then I turn it in, and it gets edited, and then it can sit for months. They never have anything scheduled that isn't of timely value ahead of time. I don't know when it'll be run, but before it's run, they do something they call fact-checking on it. They turn it over to the fact-checking department, and there's somebody who will verify every fact that I use and will call everybody that I have used as a source and check quotations with you. So I need to have a phone number that you can be
683-2371.
237.
It's 417.
Yeah,
there.
right.
And I'll vouch for everything.
Except what I've said.
I'll stand behind every lie we've told.
But don't listen to that guy from Springfield. You know, that's the whole thing.
Well, it can be kind of a nuisance when they do it, but
Well,
I think it's a good
shoot,
idea.
you darn right. I'll tell you.
I think it's a good idea because you see so much in print that
I wish I'd
nobody has
kept
said.
the articles that when Art and I were on the road and some reporter would interview us,
Yeah.
and later on I'd see the article, and it was ridiculous. It wasn't any more of what we said than the man in the moon, and even the Geographic. When I worked with them 10 years ago, and they sent out to the university, they sent the article to SMS to 2 or 3 of there, and then the writer sent me a copy to check. And every change I made, they used. And there was things he couldn't have known, like just expressions and, just
Sure.
things like this, And plus he had in there going to see who was the old boy that had the garage with the...
They cut all that out.
Well, rightly so, because, that could have caused some problems, I think.
Well,
This guy had a
as
still.
a
He just had a whiskey still.
Yeah, that's all. But anyway, but he shouldn't have done it, but he gave me a copy of this one professor at SMS, his critique of the thing, and it was ridiculous, shoot. But I always felt good that they used every change I made in the thing.
Well,
and it wasn't, I don't fault him, but
Right.
now I'm dubious of all articles I read in the National Geographic out there. If they had somebody check that,
Well,
I think that's a good policy.
Oh, I do too, and I used to do a lot of writing for the New Yorker, and they have a better fact-checking department, as a matter of fact. But you'd be surprised at the magazines that don't do any fact-checking.
no.
And of course, newspapers never do. They don't have enough time, and so that's what happens.